are you? Nice to see you. Feel free to guide us.
Yeah, those things are taken completely off, and I'll mention that in my comments too. And then that's what curriculum is associated.
First one go really quick. Yeah. So if we can, we can do 10 minutes. I think we should give up the financial update.
And we need to set the hearing.
It's really quiet.
The January 4th, 2024 tax budget hearing is called to order. Mr. Wade, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Cook,
Here.
Ms. Iapolo,
Here.
Ms. Jessling,
Present.
Ms. Martraza,
Present.
Ms. Payne.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now hear the report of the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Wade.
Thank you. Today is part of a regulatory requirement to present the tax budget as the first part of our planning for the next fiscal year, so fiscal year 25, so it's hard to believe, but we're required by law to have it approved and presented to the auditor's office by the 20th of January. We posted the notice that is required in the News Herald on the 23rd of December. And what this does is it's the initial financial planning tool for the board. It is an estimate of the amounts of money needed in the ensuing fiscal year for the voted millage that we have, and it's justified by our 5-year forecast for our expenses. So this would be a time for anybody to ask any questions on this or any comments. We're just holding a required public hearing of that.
Are there any questions? Discussion?
Not seeing any.
Okay.
We will vote, like I said, on this at the Tuesday, January 9th meeting, and then I will send it on to the auditor's office. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Jessling,
Yes.
Ms. Payne,
Yes.
Ms. Iapolo,
Yes.
Ms. Marchaza,
Yes.
Ms. Cook.
Yes.
Motion carries. Adjournment at 6:32.
Now we all stare at each other for 13 minutes.
Yes. 6:45.
Should we play rock, paper, scissors or something?
And Rochambeau.
Going down the road? Left, right, center. Get some coins out, yeah. Let's see who wins the kitty of coins.
So we just stare at each other for.
Intermission music. should be there. And she may have that coming up, because I think we just get to treat her.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking.
Yeah. Tell you where we're standing for all this stuff.
Oh, no, you didn't.
So we will be up at the podium.
Okay.
I'm gonna be on kind of this corner of the podium, and that corner of the podium. And Bill's gonna have his face.
You know, who am I?
Did you have a nice New Year's?
Yeah.
Did you feel better?
Oh, yeah, yeah. It was just like a 24-hour thing.
Well, I just say whatever he says, so I'm good.
No good.
Tired. Thanks for this, by the way.
Freaked out. So
Makes a decision for you.
it does. It literally does. And my life is good to go. I like to be good to go, but sometimes it's like,
Well, with the holidays, you always have so many extras. You know, just, do you have holidays at your house? Yeah. so
all of them. Yeah.
Just, cleaning and
Oh, yeah.
preparation and meals, shopping for that.
next week.
Wrapping cards, decorating.
And then my rescue dog that we rescued.
Oh, yeah?
Sweetest thing ever, but she came up from Mississippi. We got her in like the middle of
Okay.
It's a crazy story, but she's heartworm positive.
Oh.
So we had to take her the day before, and it's like an all-day thing, and their vet, because they're out of Pennsylvania to rescue.
Oh, yeah.
So we had, so we had literally, about an hour and a half. So we had all day out there.
Exciting. It'd be good to use that
It was
screen
just a
back
really long
there.
day.
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah,
every day.
that way we can see
Kind of dogs. Because these are kind of hard to see.
They call her an exotic bully. She's like a bulldog mixed with like a Staffordshire Terrier. I'll show you a picture. She actually looks just like my other one.
How does your other dog feel about having somebody in the
She
house?
loves her. This is a picture I took of it. For New Year's again.
Oh, they do.
They look so similar. Isn't it funny? But yeah, there's no newspapers. No newspapers.
They have their
They're
own.
like, this is my daughter with them this morning. I mean, they're just big babies. But it's funny because they look, their personalities are so similar too. They're just chill. My son. That's his job.
They're big grabbers, and then there's
That's what we
that,
do, yeah.
the device that injects like soapy water and disperses it.
Oh, no, we don't have that. We have but our dog, one of them, not the recent rescue, she was in a garage her whole life for 8 years, so she will not go to that amount of anything but her cat. So it's easy to clean up that. My son always cleans that one up.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you get the ones in the yard too? He did. And I'm like, there's like 7 that you missed, but it's his chore. So.
One other quick thing, maybe not on Tuesday, maybe February, we can talk about fruit and instead of being in spring, being at the back corner over there.
Ooh.
Because there are cameras on the wall up there that we would be able to utilize a little bit better instead of having to set up all the different things here. So we're working through that a little
That'd be
bit
cool.
right now. And then we can utilize the
Big
back
board for all
Yeah,
of
that would be
presentation
nice.
stuff. So
Yeah.
we're working
Yeah.
through the logistics on that.
Especially for reading, some of the fine print
Right.
on financial, it won't be
Right.
as little.
And we still have the safety, like,
Yeah, because there's an exit that way, and then there's an exit out this way too, but if you walk through the kitchen area, literally goes right outside.
When we set the times for the meetings, are we gonna wait to see about moving the 3 summer meetings
Yes, I talked to
earlier?
Yeah, we
we'll
talked
talk
about
about it
that,
tonight.
and, yeah, if we wanna
We can
move
make a
those up.
decision. Maybe it depends on who the performers are.
Hold on, Donovan's here, we'll ask him.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Why don't they
we'll
just
put him
move
on the
theirs?
spot.
Can they
Like,
turn
can
the
you just move
amphitheater
yours?
the other way?
Right,
So it
right.
flows
So it goes the
the
other
acoustic
direction.
sound. That sounds,
Just those three those
Just
three
those,
games.
yeah, just twist
Yeah.
it. It's fine.
our football players could handle,
Sure.
just
Yeah.
pull and push.
Did you have a good time? Did you stay up or?
I always stay up because I don't go to bed anyway, so.
She's a night owl.
Always.
Oh, I'm the opposite.
My whole life drove my sister crazy. But
Oh, I didn't
yeah,
know that.
I stayed up like I always do. And, some texting at midnight. And then I was telling Bill, we had a rib fest at my house on
Oh.
New Year's Day. So pork for good luck, and I think just having ribs all the way because it's delicious. And so we had baby backs and twice your window.
That sounds good.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
that'll work.
never fails.
Sounds delicious.
Except my granddaughter, she likes hot dogs instead.
That's easy to make.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's very easy.
That's easy to accommodate.
Eric will put some
Yeah.
hot dogs on the grill, and we'll eat your ribs. But yeah, it was very tasty.
That sounds good.
Did you take your Christmas stuff down yet?
Oh, I see why you said
My what?
7:30.
Christmas decorations down yet?
I did. Yeah, we did it a couple days after New Year's. We just finally got all of them down and put away. Our Christmas tree doesn't fit in like our storage area, so we take it to our in-laws. We're like, you could store it in your garage.
Great
right?"
idea.
We're like, that's fine.
Back
You
up
love
the
us,
truck.
right?
Is
They're
it
so sweet.
pre-lit?
It is, yeah, yeah. We always had, we have like vaulted ceilings in the one room, and we always had like a 6.5-foot tree, very
So it
small.
looked sort of wimpy.
So finally last year I got
trying to give me
a
your
10,
garbage.
I think it's 10, 9.5 or
Yeah.
10-foot tree, so
you have
looks
a
a little bit more
ladder?
appropriate. Yeah, yeah,
Because that's the only downside.
yeah. I learned how to get on the ladder this year. Bill, don't laugh.
When you're hired,
He's always
I
got
didn't
an
fall, so
opening.
that's good.
Yeah, years of decorating experience, that should work out very well.
Yeah.
Do you have specific clips that you use? Like do you
we
buy
do.
them by the
Yeah, we.
thousands?
Oh yeah, tens of thousands. Yeah. We
Are
buy
they metal or plastic?
plastic, and they stay when you. Because takedowns. It's all for takedowns. So when you
Hold down, say hold
the
down.
gutter or the roof, they stay to the. They're like secured on, so you don't have clips shooting everywhere.
Did you guys see the one house that's I think it's called Bingman Court? Maggie, you probably know by our house, the
Yeah.
Bingman Court. Those things are awesome.
Yeah.
They're so good.
Yeah, a lot.
Did you? It was so good. But then they did have like some technical issues, and it was down right around Christmas time.
Do they play music?
Yeah.
That fireball starts.
But,
Oh yeah, yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
that's excellent. And then there's another one in Whalers Cove we went to.
It was fun.
That one was good too. Not as much as the other one, but it was good. And they hand out candy canes.
Oh,
And then I don't know if you guys saw the one on Lost Nation, off of Lost Nation on Beach.
I didn't see that one. No.
They must have 10 times what that one house by us has. I mean, it's out of control. You should look it up. Yeah,
Crazy.
it's. I don't think so.
That's so pricey.
I
The
took my
amount of money they
grandma-
invest in those lights
Right,
is
I know.
crazy.
And this is a small house.
Yeah.
I'm like, how would you? That is a big expense.
It doesn't draw as much power as it used to, but
No,
it's still,
the initial investment for the product though alone.
It's expensive.
and they only last a couple of years usually, especially if they're outside,
Yeah.
because the elements are tough on them.
Yeah, this one had police too, where because there was such a big line that police were helping direct the traffic.
That's what happens when you're in the court. Like,
Yes,
totally gonna
yeah.
take this puffer foot out.
I know, I was so bummed. We took my grandma. We went. I'm like, Grandma, get in the car. We're going to take you around. You know, 'cause she doesn't drive. We went to go see the lights, and I went there, and it was closed. And I was like, bummer. But then I took her to the really good one in off of Lost Nation. So,
It's amazing. Some folks, I think, lights, you can't do too many lights because it won't look bad, but some of the blow-up things, you know,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
there's no room on your lawn.
Yes.
And it's too much.
there's a house by my church that still had blow-up stuff from Halloween, mixed in with like probably 30 giant
You have to
blow-ups
be to the microphone.
for Christmas.
Nightmare
I was like,
Before
all right.
Christmas.
Well, maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what they were going for. I don't know. It was all there.
Recording right now, those
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that
once
too.
she hits the gavel, that's when.
It's different.
They want to get their money's worth. Because those skeletons are expensive.
Yeah.
Are they the big giant ones?
They're like
Yeah.
almost $500, $400, I think.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of other things I'd spend $500.
Do they come apart? I'm assuming they
They do,
break down
yeah,
into
yeah.
smaller versions. You have to use your whole garage.
My Carter wanted one, and I
guess
was
I
like,
can be
oh,
close enough
maybe.
with
And
my
I was like,
glasses, I'm good.
Not so much. Yeah.
Cut one
I've
out
got
of
my
paper,
comments
too.
on paper and here, and like I blow it up on here. So
I
can
mean,
read.
I have to do the same thing.
Oh,
My eyes, I had LASIK done years ago.
yeah.
At the end of the day, and I use drops, so my eyes are bloodshot and dry. I can't
schedule these a little tighter.
Wife has the same thing. She did the lights.
That's what I was thinking, 6:40, 6:45, or 6:30, 6:35.
Yeah.
Enjoyed my few years of good without glasses.
Good evening. The January 4th, 2024 organizational meeting of the Mentor Board of Education is called to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.14 of the Ohio Revised Code. At this time, I would like to invite Mr. Wade to the podium to complete the oath of office.
If Ms. Marchaza would join us. If you'd raise your right hand. I, Lauren Marchaza,
I, Lauren Marchaza,
do hereby swear
do hereby swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform
faithfully perform
and discharge
and discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as a member
as a member
of the Mentor Exempted Village
of the Mentor Exempted Village
School District Board of Education.
School District Board of Education.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're all set. We now ask Ms. Iapolo and Senator Serino to join us.
Your left hand on the Bible. Raise your right hand. Ready? Repeat after me. I, Rose M. Iapolo,
I, Rose M. Iapolo,
do hereby swear
do hereby swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform
faithfully perform
and discharge
and discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as a member
as a member
of the Mentor Exempted Village School District
Mentor Exempted
Village
School District
Board of Education.
Board of Education.
Congratulations. Thank you. You can use that, I guess. Oh, yes, sorry about that.
Congratulations and welcome. Mr. Wade, please call the roll.
Ms. Cook,
Here.
Ms. Iapolo,
Here.
Ms. Jessling,
Present.
Ms. Marchaza,
Present.
Ms. Payne.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence for Perry Schools in Iowa, where a school shooting occurred today. Thank you. We will now have comments from our superintendent.
Good evening. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I need to amend the agenda to reflect a couple of changes regarding the types of committees we will be appointing members to this evening. Under number 8, board representative appointments, we need to add an alternate
for the legislative liaison, and then we need to add the board policy liaisons, which is going to be considered a board committee moving forward. So the agenda should now read, number 8, board representative appointments. Number 1, OSBA legislative liaison. Number 2, which is the addition, will be OSBA legislative alternate. Number 3, OSBA student achievement liaison. Number 4, Mentor Schools Foundation. And then number 5, board policy liaisons, in which there will be 2 members that we will select there. The second change to the agenda will be to eliminate number 14, appointment of hearing officer, and number 15, appointment of compliance officers. We actually have administrators assigned as hearing and compliance officers that deal with discipline hearings and harassment and discrimination cases in our district. Should an appeal to those decisions be necessary, the entire board would hear the case, not just 1 or 2 members. So we do not need to appoint these positions. The third change to the agenda will be after number 28, authorizing public records training designee. We need to add a, we need to add a section for superintendent report and recommendations. Under this section, we will then add the curriculum liaisons and the school safety liaisons, which are considered administrative committees and are appointed by the superintendent. So the agenda in that section will now read number 29, superintendent report and recommendations, 1, curriculum liaisons, of which there will be 2, and number 2, school safety liaisons, of which there will be 2. And then number 30 will now be adjournment. So we will adjourn after that. In order to make sure that our practice is in alignment with board policy, we're going to need to make some adjustments to what our current policy reads regarding the organizational meeting moving forward. When we combined the Neola policy template with what we were using previously with Peppel and Wagner, we did not have clear delineations between what is considered a board committee and what is considered an administrative committee. The following changes will be made to make sure this is clarified for our new liaison positions we want to add to create greater board member involvement in some of the key work we are doing in the district. It actually involves 4 different policies. So under policy 0153, appointees, we are actually going to eliminate letters E through K in our current policy. This will leave the 5 items that are considered board committees that require board appointments at the organizational meeting each year. This includes our new board policy liaisons, which we just mentioned, which will be a board committee and will be required to have a sunshine law notification. Those meetings will take place twice per year, once in late January or early February, and then once again in late August or early September when we get those updates from Neola. Under policy 0151, which is the organizational meeting policy, we will add the sentence, at the organizational meeting, board liaisons to administrative committees may be appointed by the superintendent. This will allow the superintendent to appoint board members to the administrative committees, which we currently have established, which are curriculum, and now the new one with school safety, that we have added over the last 18 months. The superintendent can add or disband administrative committees at any time, depending on the work we have in the district, but we will review the appointments to these committees at least once a year then, based on that policy change. Under policy 0154, which is about motions, we will add general legal advisor and a designee to attend public record access training required for board members for each term of office to the list of the motions. This will align with the consent agenda part of our organizational meeting that we now have amended for this evening. And then finally, under policy 6836, Citizens Financial Advisory Committee, we will add the sentence, "The committee will consist of the board president and vice president and 6 members of the community." This will align with our past policy and will continue to be considered a board committee that will also require sunshine law notification. I hope I said all that correctly, Mr. Wade. We will have these policy updates ready for the first reading at our regular meeting on Tuesday, with a second reading potentially at a work session of the board later in January. I do want to thank all of our board members for the individual conversations today as we work through the process so we can make sure that our policies and our practices are aligned correctly moving forward. Thank you.
Any discussion or questions with that? Okay. At this time, we have the nomination and election of the president. Do we have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Maggie Cook to be our president for the coming year.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. I think that, you know, when we're picking president and vice president, I think those kind of go hand in hand. This is our first opportunity to show the community that we heard their voices, and I think having a balanced president and vice president, I don't know if you all agree, would be beneficial. So I feel that, you know, knowing how you guys feel about that definitely affects my nominations and my vote. So I was interested in how you guys felt.
If your question was whether you wanted 2 people from sort of different viewpoints, because the president is the presiding officer, the vice president really just has a supportive function. The only role that the vice president plays is if the presiding officer is unable to be at a meeting. And then the Citizens Financial Advisory, that really is a reflection of the guidance that's coming from our treasurer and our 6 citizens. So whoever is the president and vice president is there as an observer and an informational gathering role, maybe ask them questions. So I would say that wouldn't necessarily be a needed consideration for this part of it. The other pieces make sense to have multiple viewpoints in our board committees. But as far as president and vice president, I don't know that that is pertinent.
I agree with Ms. Iapolo, because I do think that without the financial committee, I would say, yeah, exactly what you said. They're really kind of just titles, and there's nothing more that a vice president can do that a different, you know, any board member can't do. However, having said that, the Citizens Financial Committee, I think, is going to be really important, especially because we just had a failed levy. So I do think having different perspectives, different viewpoints on that committee is imperative. And I think it does send a message to the community that we are trying to work together, and we do want all perspectives to be heard and voiced in every committee and every role or position that we may share.
Right, and you know, last year we had Mr. Tuttle, a member on the board who was a minority, and he was elected president. I think I speak for many that made me feel a little bit more relieved, some hope that there was balance on the board, especially when you have a majority and a minority. So, you know, I know the position of president and vice are sometimes looked at as ceremonial, but I just think that who we elect today as president and vice president kind of will be the barometer for how the new board will function. So I certainly can support Ms. Cook as president if I can see balance in our vice president. That's just how I feel on this subject.
Do we have any other nominations for president at this time?
I would nominate Annie Payne.
Okay. So
well, I guess my comment about the nomination, I appreciate that. I would have no problem with Mrs. Cook being the president, but I would certainly like to be vice president, only for the fact of the financial committee, and I do think it does send a message to the community. So I'd like to, I guess, here, before we vote on president, I would be glad to not, have a dissenting vote on any of that, but obviously if they go hand in hand, I believe, with Mrs. Iapolosing. So I'd like to hear from other people. I guess, what are your opinions on that?
As I said, I don't think the role in terms of the citizens' financial is interactive as much as it is observational. Sometimes only one member can attend, it just kind of depends, but the feedback that the treasurer and superintendent are getting from those 6 citizens who have financial expertise in their professional roles is very valuable. So it's, as I said, more of a listening rather than an interactive.
I'd like to ask Ms. Cook and Ms. Jesling, since you were sitting on the board last year, how do you think that having Mr. Tuttle as president, what was your opinion on that? Because you guys made a choice to vote him in, and he was in the minority.
We've generally, I could speak to this since I'm the longest serving board member present, is that for the most part, we've had a president and vice president, and then the following year, usually the vice president has been elected as president, although that's not always been the case. So we've had some variations for a number of reasons. But other than leading the meeting, our votes are the same, in terms of our power, influence, whatever you want to call it, that we each share 1/5 of the decision-making in our district. So you need somebody to act in that parliamentary role, but our voices are co-equal.
Do you see the benefit of having more of a balanced president and vice president, especially given the election we just had?
I can tell you, just based on the last 10 years, it really was not a factor. I am happy to serve with any of my colleagues, and I felt that way for the 10 years that I've served. There's been some different styles, maybe a little bit in terms of an individual member, but everybody led with integrity and moved the agendas through the meetings very seamlessly. So I don't know that it makes that kind of a difference that you're referring to.
Well, I can speak as sitting on the other side last year, that it made a big difference having a balanced president and vice president. So, and I heard a lot of that. So if it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal in terms of how we serve, and it is more ceremonial, I think it's a small gesture that we can make to show the community we heard them. And if we really want to dissect this latest election, there was a majority of voters that spoke out, feeling a certain way. So while Ms. Payne and I are the minority here, I think it would be a great gesture to have a balance. And like I said, I would fully support Ms. Cook as president if we can agree to that.
Mr. Wade, please call the roll.
So just to clarify, we have 2 nominations. When I say your name, you'll just vote for who you
Were we done with discussion, though? Or were we allowed to still have discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have no comment.
I didn't, no comments.
No comments. Any more discussion? Okay. Mr. Wade, please call the roll.
Ms. Cook,
What are we voting for?
you say the name of the person
Say
you're
the
in
name of the
support of,
person. Okay.
president. The 2 nominations were Ms. Cook and Ms. Payne.
I will vote for myself.
Ms. Iapolo,
Ms. Payne?
Ms. Jesling,
Mrs. Cook?
Ms. Marchaza?
Mrs. Cook?
Ms. Payne?
I'll vote for myself.
President is Mrs. Cook.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, do we have a nomination and we'll have the nomination and election of the vice president. Do we have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Jessling.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Payne. I just want to go back really quick. Ms. Payne has more than proven herself as deserving of this position. In her 2 years as board member, she recommended the new curriculum notification process where the district informs parents whose children are affected by a curriculum change. This allows any member of the public as well as parents to view the new curriculum. It also allows the opportunity to provide feedback to the district. Ms. Payne recommended the retired student resource officer option that has become a reality in many districts in the area and hopefully in ours. She created the sexual content policy. She recommended both the curriculum committee and the safety committee liaison positions. Ms. Payne is a lifelong resident and graduate of Mentor. She has proven that she can compromise with board members and she listens to all sides of every issue. I've watched her vote a way that I know that she didn't feel just because for the betterment of the district. Again, like I said earlier, while some say this position is merely ceremonial, I believe who we elect here will be the barometer for how the new board will function. This is the first decision that we make, president and vice president, and I hope we can deliver a fair and balanced one. With all due respect, Ms. Jessling, you do a fabulous job. You've been here 14 years and you've had many opportunities, and I just think it would be wonderful to have Ms. Payne have that opportunity this time.
Thank you. I'd like to also note that whoever is vice president, it doesn't mean that they have to be president. I'm here to serve. I don't care necessarily about a title at all. However, like I said about the financial committee, I do think it's really imperative that we have different perspectives, and I think I do offer a different perspective. You both are teachers, and so you guys share certain perspectives that I don't have, and I think I would have a different perspective in the financial committee that would be appreciated. I do agree that I do think that this is a small gesture that would show the community that we are working together and we are trying to hear all voices and all perspectives. So while I do think that Mrs. Jessling would do a fine job with it as well, I think it would be valuable and it would send a message to the community and the perception that they have of how our board's going to function going forward.
Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Wade, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Cook?
Mrs. Jessling?
Ms. Iapolo?
Ms. Payne.
Ms. Jessling?
I'll vote for myself.
Ms. Marchaza?
Ms. Jessling.
Ms. Payne?
Myself.
Vice President, 3-2 vote, Ms. Jessling.
Next, we have the board representative appointments. Do I have a volunteer for the OSBA Legislative Liaison?
I'd like to volunteer.
I'd also like to volunteer.
Any more volunteers?
Can I, before we vote, I'd like to do with this position what Ms. Cook has done with the student achievement position, rather than just read the list from OSBA on what's happening in Ohio in general, to really dive in and make it more district specific. I see this position as an opportunity to educate the board and the community on legislation that specifically addresses voter concerns, and we've heard many coming off of such a heated election. I would want to give a comprehensive outline of each bill in a manner that is easy for everyone to understand. I think in the past, any of us who have sat here have heard that list read off, and it's rather cumbersome. I would lean to my fellow board members, to Mr. Heath and Mr. Wade, to highlight bills that are important to our district. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my dad, our district state senator, currently serves as chairman of the Higher Education Committee. I don't believe that the district has ever had an opportunity like this.
Excuse me. sorry, there's audience members that are speaking out. Can we just make sure that we keep that under control, please?
I don't think the district has ever had an opportunity like this, so I humbly ask that you allow me the privilege.
Thank you. Mrs. Marchaza, did you have any comments?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think this is an incredibly important role during especially these times that are very complex, as Ms. Iapolo noted. It's incredibly important right now and going forward for us to be aware of pending legislation, things moving through the State House. These days, it seems that our State House is very focused on education. So it's important for us to be aware of what's going to come down the pike, what's going to impact our students, our staff, our teachers, and our curricula. It's something that I've already been very interested in. It's something that I read about every day, especially in running for this position. It's something I've just kept tabs on and had a personal interest in. With kids in the district, it's certainly of a concern. And so for me, this is something I wouldn't simply read from the report. As long as it comes in time, I will dissect it a little more deeply and really highlight those things that are going to be more impending, more immediately impacting us, and something that I also plan to volunteer, just for reference, for the policy committee. So I think those two positions do go hand in hand. When you're talking about pending legislation and changing law, the policy role too is going to be very important for that. And I think that those two, again, go hand in hand. So just heads up, I'll be volunteering for that committee as well. So I would like to be considered, and thanks for the time to speak.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I think Ms. Iapolo has a unique position. I don't think we've had this opportunity before where we have a board member whose father is a state senator, and not just a state senator, he is our district state senator. And I know, Mr. Wade, you have written in previously to our state senator. So I just think that it would give us a different perspective and different access that we might not normally have to insider details about different bills and things like that. So I think Rose would be a fine option. I think Mrs. Marchaza would do a great job too. I mean,
Forgive me, my father is a respiratory therapist, so I can't claim that he's a state senator, but I can guarantee that I will do just as thorough a job.
yeah, I don't think anybody is saying that somebody's father is better than the other father. That's certainly
I didn't think that, but
okay.
yes,
Well,
I understand.
I'm just going to reiterate that it has a unique perspective, and I think it would be beneficial to our district, seeing that we have written into our state senator before and have met with him. So,
Okay, we have two volunteers. Mr. Wade, would you please call the roll?
So because we have two people and there isn't consensus for just establishing one, just to, this is not typical, so we would vote in the same way that we voted for president and vice president, just so we're on the same page. So when I say your name, if you could just say who you would want to see as the OSBA liaison. Ms. Cook.
Mrs. Marchaza.
Ms. Iapolo.
Myself.
Ms. Jessling.
Mrs. Marchaza.
Ms. Marchaza.
Myself.
Ms. Payne.
Ms. Iapolo.
So Ms. Marchaza will be the OSBA legislative liaison.
I will now take volunteers for the OSBA alternate legislative liaison.
Guess I'll volunteer myself for that.
Anyone else? See none, I do not think you need to call the roll on this one. So, Mrs. Iapolo will be our OSBA alternate legislative liaison. Thank you. Do I have a volunteer for the OSBA student achievement liaison?
I'd be happy to volunteer to do that.
Thank you. Any other volunteers?
I would volunteer to do that as well.
Any discussion? Mr. Wade, please call the roll.
Ms. Cook.
Mrs. Jessling.
Ms. Iapolo,
Myself.
Ms. Jessling,
Myself.
Ms. Marchaza,
Jessling?
Ms. Payne.
Miss Appelo?
Ms. Jessling will be the OSBA Student Achievement Liaison.
Okay, do I have a volunteer for the Menor Schools Foundation representative?
I would be happy to be that representative.
Thank you. Any other volunteers? All right. Mrs. Payne will be our Menor Schools Foundation representative. Thank you. I will now take volunteers for board policy liaisons, and there will be 2.
I'd like to volunteer.
I'll volunteer for that.
Okay, thank you. Any other volunteers? All right, seeing none, we have Mrs. Iapolo and Mrs. Marchaza as our board policy liaisons. Thank you. All right, at this time, we have a recommendation to approve the place and time for the regular meetings of the Board of Education. We were going to have some discussion with a couple of times of those meetings for our summer months.
We should
Yeah.
motion in second first, though.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So do I have a motion?
So moved that we have the second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. as our regular meeting time.
I have a second?
Second?
And discussion.
I do want to bring up the point, last year we did change the summer months, the time for the meetings, and I know we had even discussed possibly moving them to a different day for the summer, because it was really hard for people to come to both here and go to the Menor Rocks. Also, it was very loud in here once it hit about 7 o'clock, so I would like to ask if we could take a look at June, July, and August and come up with a plan for that.
I agree.
I know one of the problems that we had run into over the years where there might be a conflict for a board member where Tuesday wasn't the preferred time. As soon as we looked at making a shift, we found conflicts that for what time city council might be meeting and so forth, that it didn't seem like there were good other options. So maybe leaving the day the same, but certainly moving it back 2 hours to the 5 p.m. if that would.
I would be remiss if I didn't at least voice the fact that I did hear from a pretty good portion of people last year saying they were not happy with the time because they didn't get out of work in time to come to the board meetings, or, you know, they felt like they were rushed between here and going there. And I did look at the city council meetings, and actually, they have a meeting, I think, in January that's the same day as ours, next Tuesday. So, you know, can't do everything right there, but I do think that we should take a look at maybe just moving the day of, keeping it on the same week, but maybe for the summer, moving those 3 Tuesdays to the Thursday or something. I'm open, I just wanted to, I don't know if, I know, Ms. Iapolo, you had mentioned that you kind of heard the same thing when you were
Yeah, that was the
campaigning.
feedback that to either, it was difficult to, people felt like they had to choose, and of course, they're always going to choose an outdoor concert in the summer, or 5 o'clock was just too early. So if even just for those 3 months, we move it that day, so we can keep it at 7, I think that would be appreciated by the public.
Is there potential for us to just move it 1 hour up as opposed to, because we're meeting at 5 over the summer? Yeah, so perhaps we can meet at 6?
We would still have, with public commentary, it took us well over 7 even last summer. And it gets fairly loud in here.
One of the other things is the parking, because we really, Menor Schools supplies the parking for Menor Rocks. They really don't have parking outside of our facilities, so moving it to 6 would still create a parking issue.
Could we postpone making a decision on changing for those 3 summer months so we have a chance to maybe collaborate with the folks from the city and look at what other conflicts it might pose if we kept it on a different day for those 3 months.
What other conflicts?
I was going to say, are there other
could-
entities that we
yeah.
want to look at too? I know, was it the library board was another one that I think was?
Wednesday, I think, aren't they
Is
Wednesday?
that on Wednesdays? We can gather maybe some of those dates and bring it to the meeting on Tuesday and make a decision then if we would want to do that. So we'll look at city council. We'll look at library. Are there others that any of our members can?
Does anybody know if
Because-
city council moves theirs in the summer? They do,
They
right?
do, they move it
Yeah.
earlier.
Okay.
I think 5. I'm open to looking at different days too. I think it's a good suggestion, but it would be nice to have a little information gathering time so we could
All right.
talk about it
So
on,
we don't have to change it twice.
on the 9th, yes.
So if any board members come up with any other entities that we want to look at that you think might be conflicts, just let me know in the next couple days and we'll try and gather all that and we'll present that on Tuesday. Mr. Wade, did you have another piece that you were looking at?
Yeah, just the policy. It says that the board shall, at the organizational meeting, vote on the following. Designate a day, place, and time for regular meetings, which shall be held at least once every 2 months.
So if we vote to approve the second Tuesday right now, with that one adjustment in November that we've already got mentioned.
We would be meeting the
And then-
organizational meeting. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that.
so we
Yes.
can meet that, and then we can make an adjustment to that schedule.
And I'll just remind that you don't have to have a meeting every month.
That is true. All right. Is there any more discussion on this? Okay, Mr. Wade, please call the roll.
Ms. Jessling,
Yes.
Ms. Marchaza,
Yes.
Ms. Iapolo,
Yes.
Ms. Payne,
Yes.
Ms. Cook.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. And finally, we have approval of agenda items 10 through 28. Does anyone have a need for discussion before I call for a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to amend and to remove item 10 for a separate vote.
Okay,
That's what we've typically done in the past.
yes. Mr. Wade, could you help me here? Should we take out number 10 first and go to stay in order, or do we go 11 through?
Yeah, I would vote, let's vote on 10 first,
Okay,
and then we can vote on 11 through what I believe now is 20, yeah, it's still 28, right?
it is. Yes. Okay, so, motion to approve, do I have a motion to approve the approval of membership to the Ohio School Board Association for 2024?
So moved. Second.
And discussion.
I've appreciated the role that the OSBA has played in our district over a number of years. They were instrumental in our most recent superintendent and treasurer searches. They've been a wonderful resource for us on an array of matters. We appreciate having the Capital Conference offered each year, and we've actively participated in that over all the years that I'm aware of. And Capital Conference is an opportunity for our students to be showcased, which we've done also for the last 10 years that I'm aware of. And also that there are learning sessions on a wide variety of topics from experts within the state and even some folks from outside the state that can inform our board governance training. And I've always found those sessions to be of great value. So by participating in that, we have the strength in numbers that public school districts, the vast majority, belong to Ohio School Boards Association, and that in the aggregate, we can stand behind best practices as well as advocate for the best climate for public education. So in my mind, they offer a great deal, and it's a worthy group to belong to.
So I would add, I would absolutely agree with some of what Ms. Jeschling just said. I've attended many classes and courses with OSBA, and I do find value in some of them. However, my main issue is with the membership alone. I don't have or take issue with individual classes that people may attend, or even Capital Conference. We still pay for Capital Conference. Even though we do have a membership, we still pay for a portion of our who goes to Capital Conference. So we get some free, and then some we have to pay. And we still do pay for classes and courses that we elect to go to through OSBA. But what I will say is that I disagree very much with using public tax dollars and putting it towards political efforts. And OSBA has a lobbying platform. They have a legislative platform. I was very dismayed last year at the Capitol Conference when the parental rights platform was, by large, I was sitting in there, probably 80% of school boards turned it down. So they do not lobby for parental rights. So I disagree with spending $11,000 on using public tax money for political purposes. Not all that $11,000 is going to go towards their lobbyists or their legislative platform, but a portion does go towards it. And I don't think that if we're trying to give a perception out to the community that we're not playing politics or we're trying to stay neutral, I don't think it's wise to give money to an organization that is a 501c4, which is different than a 501c3. 501c3 is more of a charity. C4, the change is that they can have lobbying efforts, which in itself is political. So I greatly disagree with spending money via a membership with them.
I agree. Being new, when I came across this, I did some research, and I believe it was in 2022 where the board, together with then Mr. Porter, who was superintendent, agreed to separate from NSBA because they were too political in making comments that called parents terrorists. So not only was it an inappropriate characterization, it was a political statement not supported by many in the country and also not supported by Mentor. I think that we just need to be consistent. You know, I also find a lot of useful information, and certainly the Capitol Conference I got to attend this year, and that was wonderful. And again, we can still take advantage of those a la carte, I guess you could say. But maybe we send a message that says, you know, the majority of our voters voted for parental rights, and the fact that they are not they're lobbying against that. I think that we can send a message and say, you're not going to get our money. You know, we can take $10,000. I know it's not a lot in the budget that we have, but that's money that we're not taking away from our students, resources, and staff. So maybe we send a message this time around and say we're not going to spend tax dollars for lobbying against parental rights.
As a candidate, I will say that I took advantage of OSBA's training for candidates, people who are interested in becoming school board members. They were free, luckily, to me, and I found them to be incredibly valuable and helped inform my positions and my opinions on school board matters in public education. I looked at the legislative platform with OSBA, and I didn't see anything that I wouldn't appreciate them lobbying on our behalf for. So I'm curious as to what in the platform you're concerned about.
So in last year at the Capitol Conference.
No, I understood that. Forgive me. I understood what you said, but that's not in the platform today, is it?
Right, because they voted it down.
So then what is on the platform today that you take issue with?
I take issue with their general platform, because if we're saying that we are trying to stay neutral and we shouldn't be using public dollars for anything political in nature, this is very political with the 501c4. Also, just for example, I took a course with OSBA where they mocked parents who spoke out against masking and showed videos of them during this course stating that they were, it was basically a course about trying to not let people like that speak for public participation. also for CRT. They showed little clips, and I was appalled at that. So there are things that I agree with OSBA, but I vehemently oppose using public tax money for political purposes. And I think that that can be appreciated by our board because if you remember, well, you weren't here, but I think Ms. Iapolo was at that meeting. In July of 2022, I requested to go to a training, and Ms. Jeschling and Ms. Cook voted against my training, which was only $40, because they thought it was political in nature. So under that same guise, I think we need to be consistent and send a consistent message. Either it's okay, or
But I
it's
haven't
not
really
okay.
heard anything about specific issues in the platform that you're taking, that are problematic for you. So I guess I'm still not hearing that.
I think not
Because the
fighting,
platform
lobbying for
itself is-
parental rights is the
So that's
problem.
not in the platform, and that's what you take issue with. Am I clear?
Absolutely.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
If I recall correctly, the discussion that we had specifically before the legislative meeting at Capitol Conference of 2022, the sticking point was the word all. It didn't have any nuance to it, and that was why at least that 80% or whatever that long protracted meeting decided that it was too rigid. And so it was agreed upon by those present that that would not be added to the platform. So there was no objection or minimizing of parental rights, because that's been embedded in lots of things that the OSBA has encouraged and supported. It was in the platform because of its all or nothing, basically. All was the word. And I remember we had that work session and we spent a couple hours
Yes,
focused
I do
on
remember
that detail. And because it was such a rigid interpretation of protecting parental rights, because it had to do with the impact on classroom teachers having to make sure that they would have their entire curriculum potentially available on day one, which made it impossible to be flexible to meet the evolving needs of your class, for example. So it just got to be so rigid that I don't think it was in the best interest of what is a good practice for classroom teachers. So that was how we came up to that point. And we must not have been alone, because that meeting went on for 4.5 hours, and finally they decided to leave that out, as I recall, because the general vote was no. So they weren't against parental rights, but they were against kind of that extreme position having to do with
Now,
them.
I sat in that meeting and I did see several amendments. I mean, amendments were going up left and right in the meeting. So they did sift through some of that. However, I stand firm. I know that Ms. Cook and Ms. Jeschling, you guys didn't agree with the word all. I certainly agree with the word all. I think parents do have a right to know all aspects of their child's education. So that's why I can't support the OSBA membership if they can't support parents, especially using public tax dollars without asking our taxpayers how they feel about the legislative platform or what they approve and don't approve of. I just think that it's sending the wrong message that we are okay with political aspects and using our public tax dollars for those efforts.
So in reviewing the legislative platform earlier today, what I saw was an emphasis on public education. And if public tax dollars should fund anything at all, I think we could all agree it's public education. So for me, that's what stood out to me, and that's why I would wholeheartedly support a membership with the OSBA.
Let's just remember too that we have a failed levy, so this could send a message to our taxpayers.
Yes.
We're really being picky about where we're sending our money,
Yes.
your money.
I agree.
I think I would have to agree with Mrs. Marchesa here that lobbying is a way of, is the way that the government is working right now. And public schools, I feel they do have a right to have lobbyists as well. And there is no other money to pay for the lobbyists other than public school money. That is why the platform that OSBA creates, it's very stringent. You need to have 75% of your voting members of the legislative, your legislative liaisons deciding that this goes into your legislative platform. And the legislative platform is very transparent. You can go on the OSBA site and you can look at everything that they would lobby for. They're not lobbying against parental rights. They're lobbying for the things that are on their platform. And I have also thoroughly reviewed the legislative platform of OSBA, and it is very public, pro-public education. There is not a single thing on there that I would not stand for. And if anyone could bring up something specifically to me to say, I cannot agree with this platform here, and that's why Mentor schools shouldn't invest in that, then I would be open to hearing that. But I feel that everything on their platform is very appropriate to advocate for.
Mrs. Cook, do you feel that a 501c4 does have, since it does have lobbying efforts, is political in nature?
Yes.
So if I go back to July of 2022, when you voted against my training, your words, which is okay, we vote on training, that's fine, I take no issue with that. But I think we need to have a clear, consistent message, because your reason for voting no on video, because I watched it again the other day just to see, for this purpose specifically, because we had this conversation last year. Your reason was that it was political in nature, that training was political in nature, so you couldn't support that.
It was political in nature. It was anti-public education. There were speakers at that conference when I looked into it that specifically had an agenda that said they wanted to reduce public education and actually eliminate public education and defund it.
I don't believe that's true, but there were some speakers, I will say, that I don't wholeheartedly agree with, just like OSBA, which you see that as anti-public school. I see OSBA as anti-parental rights with some of their courses. It's certainly the class that I took about public participation and how to shut that down when parents start speaking up about their rights, about their children in masks, or about what their children are seeing in books, or what their children are seeing in that are considered CRT or DEI or whatnot. So we just have, I guess, different perspectives on what kind of political aspects are acceptable and not.
So was there something in the legislative platform that you did not agree with?
I disagree with the fact that they didn't allow parental rights into the platform.
Okay, but there's nothing currently in the platform that you disagree with?
Last I checked, there's nothing in the platform, but it's the fact that they voted down parental rights, and I disagree with some of their material and courses that they offer, but
Okay.
I think we all should have the right to go to what training we see fit.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? Mr. Wade, please call the roll.
Ms. Jessling,
Yes.
Ms. Marchaza,
Yes.
Ms. Iapolo,
No.
Ms. Payne,
No.
Ms. Cook.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
All right. We will take approval of agenda items for items 11 through 28. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Second?
Mr. Wade, please call the roll.
Ms. Jessling,
Yes.
Ms. Payne,
Yes.
Ms. Cook, or excuse me, sorry, Ms. Iapolo,
Yes.
Ms. Marchaza,
Yes.
Ms. Cook.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to the superintendent report and recommendations, where we've got our two administrative committees that we're looking at. We've got our curriculum liaison committee first. Currently sitting on that committee, we've got Ms. Jessling and Mrs. Payne. Is that something you are still wanting to be part of? Any others that would want to be part of that too?
I'd be interested.
And I'm just looking at my sheet here with all the other appointments that we've had this evening to make sure that we're balancing out what we have here too. From the school safety side, then we currently have Mrs. Cook and Mrs. Briner, who is no longer on the board, that are part of that. Mrs. Cook, I'm assuming you want to continue with that.
I would love to, thank you.
And any others that would be interested?
I would.
I'd like to be considered as well.
So that's safety.
Are we allowed to have any kind of comments about that?
Yeah,
Craig?
yeah, feel free.
So I would just add that I kind of spearheaded the entire discussion about the retired resource officers, and that's been going on for about, a year and a half now. So I think I would be a valuable resource in the safety committee. And after we kind of created the liaison position for curriculum, I was consistently requesting that same thing for safety. And if we go back a couple months ago, we did kind of talk about safety committee, and it was Mrs. Cook, myself, and then Mrs. Briner who offered to be on it. And I stepped away. I said, let Mrs. Briner, because she only had 3 more months to go. So I've been pretty much invested in safety and also discipline, which I'm hoping that discussion can kind of weave its way through into the safety committee as well.
So for me, you know, it was one of my top priority. It was my top priority during my campaign, and with 2 children in the district, it's always on my mind, and so it's something I think about constantly. And I've been really impressed with the progress we've made so far. Of course, we definitely have to make some adjustments to our expectations now that our PI levy did not pass. So we're going to have to get creative, and that's something I'm really ready to do and have that conversation to see what we can do to make our buildings as safe as they can possibly be.
Mrs. Payne, would you consider giving up curriculum?
I mean, I'm the one who recommended it, but if I had to pick between the two, I would like to switch to safety. I've been on the curriculum
then.
for...
That's fine, yeah.
And again, looking at the balance that we're trying to strike with some of this too. Currently, Ms. Cook has financial advisory and nothing else. Safety would give her 2 pieces to the puzzle here. Annie, you currently have Mentor Schools Foundation. Safety would give you 2. Lauren, you've got legislative liaison and board policy liaison, so that gives you 2. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Marchaza. Ms. Iapolo, we've got the legislative alternate, which is not a lot really right now. And then the board policy liaison. So part of what I'm thinking right now is if we do safety with Mrs. Cook and Mrs. Payne, and then curriculum with Mrs. Iapolo, and then we've got a decision to make between Mrs. Marchaza and Mrs. Jessling.
Oh, Jenny, if you would like that, I could.
I'd be happy to continue to serve on that.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Of course.
So let's go this route then. Let's go curriculum liaisons will be Mrs. Iapolo and Mrs. Jessling. Let's go safety with Mrs. Cook and Mrs. Payne. And I believe we've got some pretty good balance across the board then. Everybody agreeable to that? All right. All right, so that's what we will do. thank you for the discussion and the compromise with all of that, too. I think this gives us some pretty good balance from those committees. And the one thing I'll mention about the Board Policy Liaison Committee, too, personally, I love that we have Mrs. Marchaza and Mrs. Iapolo on that, because we just went through the Board Policy Manual piece to the puzzle, and
You never want to look at it again, do you?
for you guys to be able to jump into some of the board policies and really dig into some of those updates that we make. I think that'll be an important piece to that puzzle, too. And again, I think you'll both bring some very good perspective to that. Plus, you'll just enjoy having another meeting with Mr. Wade and I twice a year. All right, that's everything that I have on my superintendent report and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second?
Please call the roll. Mr. Wade?
Ms. Payne?
Yes.
Ms. Jessling?
Yes.
Ms. Iapolo?
Yes.
Ms. Marchaza?
Yes.
Ms. Cook?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 7:45.